What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another video. Today I'm talking about Loki. So this past week the season finale aired. It is episode 6 of 6 for the first season, and it was fucking crazy. This is going to be your spoiler warning, by the way, because I will be talking about spoilers for this episode and the whole season. So if you haven't watched it, one, what the fuck are you doing? Go watch Loki. It's incredible. Then come back to this video and listen to my thoughts about it. So yeah, Loki was incredible overall. I think that Loki is by far the best of the Disney Plus MCU shows. And that's hard for me to say because I said it in my last Loki video. I absolutely adore Scarlet Witch and Vision. They're my favorite Marvel characters. And so, of course, WandaVision is still my favorite MCU show because of my bias. And that's 100% the only reason. I love WandaVision. I think it's a perfect series pretty much. But Loki is just kind of on another level. Loki did so many things that I wasn't really prepared for and I wasn't really expecting. I didn't know what to expect from this show going into it. I remember this was maybe my least anticipated Disney Plus show. Whenever they announced all of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, I was like, okay, it'll be cool to see where Loki from 2012 at the end of Endgame goes, because obviously we knew that was the Loki they were going to be following with this series. But I mean, I've always been a fan of Loki. I've liked him as a character. I think he's obviously, Tom Hiddleston crushes it as Loki every time he's on screen. There's a reason he's such a fan favorite and that he's been around for so long. But it wasn't one that I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see Loki. But after it started airing, I was like, wow, I cannot wait for the next episode of Loki every single week. And it just did that every time. And it just like consistently got better pretty much. I think that the third episode is probably my second favorite one because there's so much character work done in that episode. And I also totally fell off the bandwagon of being able to I planned on putting out videos on every episode. Obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, that episode was amazing. But the season finale, wow, it was ridiculous. It was so good. So basically, I'm not going to go by play of how the story got to this point. I'm mainly just going to give my general thoughts on specific things. So obviously, I'm going with the intention that you've watched Loki. You'll know what I'm talking about. We get fucking Kang in this episode. We got Kang the Conqueror in the finale of Loki. Like, he's most of the episode, arguably, which is fucking insane to see. It's crazy because like the Disney Plus shows are so integral to the MCU now, which I love. I love this cross medium storytelling. Like, we now have Marvel on TV and on the big screen, and the TV is just as important, arguably more. Like, I think that Loki is probably the most important Marvel property since Iron Man 1, maybe, as far as like impact on the MCU. And like Iron Man 1 only just because like it started everything. But like Loki fundamentally changes everything about the MCU like to this point and also going forward because of what it does with the timeline and the multiverse and how it just cracks it wide open. And it's so cool to see. Like, one, I gotta talk about Kang. I guess I'll talk about Kang. So one, Jonathan Majors is Kang the Conqueror, and he plays a variant of Kang who basically there's so much to get into here. There are so many layers of this. So during one of his monologues, he's explaining who he is, saying he's a variant of Kang. And at a point long in the past, these variants of Kang, all of them figured out that there was universes stacked on top of each other. There was a multiverse. And for a while there was peace and they were kind of sharing technology and making things better. But then of course there spanned a multiversal war between all these different Kangs trying to make their universe the prime and prominent universe in the multiverse. And then this Kang variant that we see in the Loki finale was able to harness this monster at the end of time, basically, and kind of solidify the timeline into the sacred timeline that we've known, which is the entire MCU that we've seen up until this point. And so Kang is at the Citadel at the end of time, outside of the timeline, making sure that nothing happens. He created the TVA to make sure that the sacred timeline stays intact and that we don't get this multiversal war with all these Kangs again. So like literally this Kang is responsible for the entire MCU if you want to go back far enough. And then also just the fact that he casually dropped the fact that like in the distant past in the MCU, there was a multiversal war between Kangs. I don't like fucking what? That is so cool. Like this goes so far and embraces so much being a comic book that it's ridiculous. I love it so much. And so that's just crazy to think about. And then it also, like, it's a perfect way to establish and explain the fact that we haven't had to deal with the multiverse in Marvel up until this point, because Kang effectively got rid of it with the sacred timeline. He said, no, we don't have to deal with all that. Like, I'll make it peaceful in this. But then also, it is such strong writing to say that this version of Kang, who has enslaved people to, like, variants to work for the TVA, we don't, thousands of people, would assume. I don't know. I don't think we ever get an exact, like, employee count for who makes up the TVA, but he's enslaved basically thousands of people to do this job, lied to them, right? Created the timekeepers, which are not real, to then, like, do this. And then also he just erases people and places and entire timelines from existence to keep the sacred timeline. He will kill billions of people throughout all of time ever to keep doing this, right? And he's the good version of Kang. He's the good one, right? That's fucking terrifying to think that, like, this version of Kang, and he mentions it in the episode, he says, if you think I'm evil, wait until you meet my variants, right? He already, Jonathan Majors brings so much charisma to this performance. He absolutely steals the show. Every scene, every line that he's in is just incredible. I love the constant push ins and then pull backs that we get from his character while he's at the desk. But, like, he's so eccentric and so captivating in his performance the whole time. But then also his character is immediately fleshed out so well in less than 40 minutes. The episode is like 46 minutes long or something, I think. Like 9 minutes of those are probably credits. So, like, you get like 40 minutes of actual screen time. And then, I don't know, probably like 20. I would guess that he has probably like 27 minutes of screen time in this episode. Maybe, because you also have the beginning where it's Loki and Sylvie investigating the Citadel, and then you also get shots of Mobius and Renslayer and their kind of conflict at the TVA and what's going on with that. So I'd say Jonathan Majors has like 20 to 25-ish minutes of screen time in this episode, right? And his character is developed and fleshed out phenomenally in that amount of time. It's incredible. So we have Kang, who's obviously going to be an Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and is obviously going to be a huge force going forward in the MCU. So we get that, and then we also just get the explosion of the multiverse. And we get that because he has basically guided Sylvie and Loki to this end of time, and he wants them to take over the TVA for him. He's tired. He's been doing this for millennia, right? And he's just over it. And so he wants them basically to do his job and be that. And he says, okay, there's two options. You either take over and you do that, or you kill me, the multiverse branches, and thousands of Kangs come, and it's a whole other multiversal war. And at the end, I'll end up right back here again, because my version will, of course, do what I did originally and make the TVA, make the sacred timeline. And Sylvie, okay, I'll talk about Sylvie and Loki for a second, because I love their chemistry, their interaction. It's why episode 3 is my second favorite one. The finale is my favorite because of what it means for the MCU, because of Kang, because of all the implications, everything I was just talking about. The reason episode 3 is my favorite is because it's nothing but a character episode, basically. You spend the entire episode with Loki and Sylvie, you get their interactions, you get these character moments, these incredibly intimate and then also just personable and entertaining things that I love whenever you can take time with characters and really just like let things exist. And that's something that the Disney Plus shows especially have been able to do. Loki's been able to do it phenomenally too, is that there's the time to let these moments play out, to let these characters just like live and kind of get that emotional resonance. You get that drama. Of course, there's quips and stuff in the show, but counter to a lot of the movies, the quips never underline or undermine any of the drama that's happening on screen. And so I love Loki and Sylvie's interactions. I love their chemistry. I love their dynamic. And it's really heartbreaking because at the end, you have Sylvie, who her entire life has been about defeating the TVA. And then, of course, whenever she learns it's a sham, she's like, oh, I have to kill the person responsible for this. So they find Kang, and her one purpose throughout her entire life has been to get here and to kill him, right? And Loki now is listening to what Kang is saying, and he's like, maybe we should listen to him for a second. Maybe we should take a second and think about this. And she just doesn't want to. So you get this conflict of like, Sylvie's trying to kill Kang, and Loki's just trying to stop her because he thinks they should think about it. One of my favorite lines in the show is her saying, why aren't we seeing this the same? And Loki says, because you can't trust and because I can't be trusted. And it's absolutely heartbreaking, but it also just goes to show that like Sylvie is not in the same place on her journey as a Loki that Loki is. Loki has gone through a lot more than she has. Even though this is a Loki who hasn't gone through anything post Avengers, he saw what he was meant to go through post Avengers, and then has gone on this different journey across this season with the TV and with Sylvie and everything like that. And so it makes complete sense that she's not in the same place emotionally that he is. And so she can't let go of that drive and that I have to make this person pay for what he did to me. And so we of course get, she kills Kang and basically frees the multiverse, frees the timeline. And you see it start to branch, and all of the branches come from all of the different branches. And so the multiverse is just busted wide open. That's of course going to lead directly into the multiverse of madness. And of course, No Way Home, which we're definitely getting Andrew and Toby Spider-Man in them. It's happening, which is insane. And so just the implications here is just wild. There's so much to love about it. I love a lot too that, oh, one of my other favorite parts in the episode was when Sylvie's she's berating Kang for being evil and stuff. And he's just like, grow up. Like, you are also evil. You've killed countless people in your mission to get here for vengeance, right? Like, we're not that different. And I love the way that Kang explains it. He's like, yeah, of course it's fucked up and it's evil or whatever, but like, it's practical. What I've done is practical for the multiverse. And so it's a very compelling and a very interesting argument and back and forth. And I love that scene or that exchange. But yeah, it's just, there's so much to love about Loki. I think one real quick from a production standpoint, set design, costume design, VFX, the score is incredible. It's probably my favorite Marvel score out of anything, actually. It's so great. I need to check after I finish recording this and see if episodes 4 through 6 are on Spotify now, because for a while it's just been episodes 1 through 3, and I've been really listening to that, and it's incredible. Natalie Holt did an incredible job. But yeah, the direction, Kate Herron did a fantastic job. The writing, it's just, I love this show so much. I think this show hits all the buttons that I didn't know that I needed and wanted it to, right? It's an incredible experience all the way through. I love it a lot. Yeah, Loki was incredible. I wasn't anticipating loving this as much as I did, but it's fantastic. I can't wait for season 2. Loki has become one of my all-time favorite characters in the MCU, and just generally as a character, I think there's so much you can do with him. And I love the fact that this whole season and this series to this point has been about whether or not Loki can change as a person and an individual. And I think that's such an interesting question to ask a character like Loki specifically, because Loki is not just tied to Marvel. He's not like Iron Man, right? Or Captain America. Loki is a Norse mythology character. Like this is not the only version of Loki that's ever existed, right? And so it's really interesting to think about whether or not this mythic archetype put in this Marvel world, like whether or not in this version of Loki, he is allowed to change as a person. I think that's a very interesting conversation and a topic all unto itself, but I love that that's what they explored with this season and kind of show, and we kind of go through an experience. And I love it. I think it's great. And I think that he did definitely change throughout this course of this series. You can see that. I think that he's changed arguably more than he did from 2012 to 2019 or 2018. Right? Yeah, he died in Infinity War. I think that he arguably has changed more over this season than he did through all of that. And it's really interesting. But yeah, I think those are most of my thoughts on the Loki finale, the Loki series as a whole. I loved it, as I've said like 18 times at this point. I think it's incredible. Can't wait for season 2. Can't wait for Spider-Man No Way Home. And then of course, Multiverse of Madness, which Loki is now apparently reported to appear in, which is going to be awesome. I can't wait. The MCU is insane. They're playing 4D chess. It's ridiculous. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how Feige does it. I don't know how everyone involved does it. It's truly amazing. And yeah, I loved Loki. It was great. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like down below. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and turning that notification bell on. I really appreciate it, and it really helps me out. Of course, if you haven't, please be sure to follow me on Twitter at APBatman with 2 T's. You can also follow my Batman account at Batman Files, where I post all my Batman stuff, of course. And I'll have both of those linked down in the description below. And yeah, thank you again so much for watching, and be sure to tune in to the next one. Later.